tree, the tree. All right. All right. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. Oh, hey, Venom, what's up, man? Welcome, welcome. No rush. It's not quite 9:30, so don't feel a need to rush. But I hope you're doing well. What's going on, brother? Chromatic, what's up? What's up? Someone, what's up? Bartholomew, welcome. Welcome in. We are about to get started. We are going to get started. We are continuing our reading of the Conjure Codex, a compendium of invocation, evocation, and conjuration. This is going to be a good one. We dove into it a couple weeks ago, and we are picking it back up tonight. So I hope you guys are ready. We're going to learn how to work with the various spirits from various disciplines, backgrounds, perspectives. That's the beauty of the Conjure Codex, right? All of them. There's 5 of them. I have all 5 physical copies, and they're anthologies. So there's one editor or one compiler, but each chapter is written by a different author, and so it's their own perspectives on whatever that volume is about, right? They all seem to focus on spirit work. It just depends on the theme, I guess, of how they're approaching it. And so I find this series very interesting because you don't get that a lot. I don't know of too many anthologies. There are a few outside of Conjure Codex, but I don't know of too many that are from renowned magicians. E.A. Coetting and his ilk don't count. From like renowned magicians, I don't know of too many. All right.
What's up?
What's going on, man?
Not much. I think Frisvold has one anthology.
Really? What is that? What is that called?
Serpent Songs, I think.
Oh, I have a PDF. I just never. That's an anthology.
It is.
I
It
was not
has
aware of that.
it has Frisvold, Gemma Gary, Shani Oates. Um, Looking for anybody else that jumps out at me.
So I
Sarah Ann
have.
Lawless is in there. Jesse Hathaway Diaz is in there.
Oh, maybe I don't have Serpent Songs. I thought I had Serpent Songs. Okay, I guess not.
Yeah.
What is
There
this?
isn't a there is a it's a Tradcraft anthology. So
Oh, this is Serpent Worship. Okay. Okay, Serpent Worship.
mhm.
I did not know that that was an anthology. That's cool. That's cool. But yeah, I
Um,
like anthologies. I think it's really interesting that you get the varying perspectives instead of just one person. That's why I like the panels, because you don't just have to take one person, right? You get the varying perspectives, the audience perspectives. I like that. Uh, so it gives
I do
people
too.
choice options.
Um, what were we on?
I'm sorry.
Which one were we on? Is what I'm looking at. Am I
Oh,
looking at the right
we
Conjure
were on page
Codex?
23.
Page 23.
Yes, we were right on the second paragraph on the right side where it says we also need to keep in mind.
That's right. That's right. I remember
Let me
now.
zoom in for the audience. There we go. Um, how can I center? Oh, I'm gonna have to zoom out just a little bit.
You had to get it in the frame.
Yeah, to like make sure. Because if I go even one more, yeah, it doesn't let me like choose. Oh wait, yes it does. Can I choose the scale? No, it doesn't let me scale it the way I want. Okay, whatever. That's fine. All right. What's up, Project? Welcome, welcome in, welcome in. Be sure to like the stream, guys, so we can get this out to more people. This is some important stuff. This is some very interesting stuff within the occult. This isn't the three books of occult philosophy or the Tricks or a dry, boring text. This is the get your hands dirty. This is the practical. This is the good stuff. So I'd like to get as many people in here as we can. Um, all right, brother. I hope you had a good week between this Tuesday and last Tuesday. I hope you're doing well. I hope the family is well.
Everything's going well.
Excellent, excellent. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Do you want to kick her off tonight, or would you like me to start?
Sure, I can kick it off.
All right.
All right. Second paragraph, right side.
Yep.
We also need to keep in mind that the Africans were not unfamiliar with Christianity before coming to Brazil. In fact, in Angola and parts of Upper Congo, at least, we find the syncretizing of nature spirits with saints already in the 16th century. Certainly in the 16th and 17th century, the popular Catholicism was more of a magical character, was of a more magical character. Prayers had power, and it was possible to use the divine power for healing and hexing. The mana or ashe that embedded potency and force in all things were easily recognized as the power behind prayers.
Issa, welcome in. Welcome in.
Isa. What we are left with is a cult that is focusing on the powers of the spirit of fire, the importance of receiving and transmitting Santi, with the prospect of teachings and healings. The ecstatic character of this cult, along with its magical Catholicism, indigenous and African elements, was, as we have seen earlier, difficult to fully unite with Umbanda in the earliest or 20th century. They were given a line under the rulership of Saint Cyprian, and somehow the spirit of fire, Carria Carria Pemba, at times also called Bombonjera, and several other epitaphs, was fused with the fiery Yoruba Orisha, namely Eshu. This is quite remarkable, as prior to the founding of Umbanda, Yoruba cults did not feel much inclined towards the Bantu derived cults. I believe what happened was a perceived angelic class of potestates?
Potestates.
Potestates, yeah. The potestates are the powers that inform the art, arc, or principalities in the third heaven, where we, in conformity with the Zohar, find Gan Eden, the paradisiacal state. We find these terms in several of the epistles of St. Paul, always presented as warnings. The powers themselves were established as a class of warrior angels that were assigned a twofold task. They would be the carriers of consciousness and history and its distributors to all of humankind, and also they would be the fierce defenders of the divine kingdom. The servants, the principalities, had the responsibility of delegating the knowledge of the powers to the humans and thus blessing the material world with angelic light. Herein enters the mystery of rebellion and the fallen angels. These two classes of angels, being so intimately linked with matter and humans, were naturally those most subject to temptation and fall. This is not the place to venture into the intricate mystery. I am merely pointing out that there might be a relationship between the warrior angels and the potestates, and the form of power held by the retinue of spirits in the cult of Kimbanda. They both share the element of fire, and the angels partake of this in the form of heat, but on earth this takes the form of peppers and gunpowder that ignites the serpent within, mirroring the serpent of the heavens. This means that possession starts from within. The potential within the person needs to be activated in order to join with the extended natural force that is called upon. Possession, in other words, unlocks a cosmic potential within the person that carries a specific ray. At this crossroad, we find a delicate nuance, namely the difference between exercising spirit and one's psyche. With the latter, I refer to possession given in what is called Ikwe, to pretend to be in a state of possession. This takes the form of playing out a given spiritual theme. I think it jumps to the left.
Yeah.
At times, the exercise can have a profound psychological effect and lead to the healing of wounds of the soul. Other times, the pretender is unlocking the potential for possession, and the spirit inside and around meets like flashes of rainbows, and genuine possession happens. In this range of possession, from pretending to losing consciousness while a spirit is using your flesh, there is a wide range of nuances. I want to mention 3 forms. So, you have anything on that? Because I find that kind of interesting. This like fake it till you make it kind of.
Yeah, I'm not really into that. That seems to be, from what I understand. This is the only other text that I've seen it in that mentions it outside of like modern magical systems. I'm not a fan of faking it till you make it. I'm of the mind that if you're not getting any results or you're not getting anything, either stop and try again later or regroup and try again or something like that. I'm personally not into the fake it till you make it sort of mentality.
I I don't know. Um, I haven't been mounted, so I mean I can't say for sure that I know like whether this would be valid or not. But
Oh, well, in the
for
context of possession, I've never had any sort of possession in this sense either. So I'm not. I'm saying in the general magical sense of things, I'm not into fake it till you make it. But
yeah,
for possession, I don't. I mean, I guess there's you could like take method acting as that sort of a thing, right? Or what Nick Cage calls it, nouveau shamanic.
yeah.
That sort of thing where you sort of pretend like to for real be this character,
You
and
embody the character.
right, and it possesses you. So I mean, I guess I've never done anything like this when it comes to possession, so I can't say. But I do know in general, I'm not a fan of fake it till you make it.
This sounds a lot like
Oops, sorry.
uh what's the ecstatic Christian church that does the tongue speaking in tongues and
Oh, Pentecostals.
yeah, this sounds a lot like how Pentecostals act actually.
Yeah, really weird. But
Yeah.
hey, if it works, by all means.
Yeah. The first one is to have Eshu on your shoulders. The second is what is known as two-headed possession, and the third is a full possession. The full possession can be quite impressive, and one sign of a full possession is a soft pillar of wind that is rising for a moment from the medium just before the spirit strikes down. At this point, the medium will appear to be in an internal battle as one consciousness goes and another comes. It is always exhausting to be the subject to a full possession. Upon regaining consciousness, the body is often tender and painful, and you are often confused yourself. It takes time to master these forms of possession, and they are rare. More common is the two headed possession.
Oop.
And this, you good?
Yeah, yeah. I accidentally skipped the page.
Oh, sorry. In this state, the medium is partly aware of what is going on. The spirit is not clouding the consciousness of the host totally. This is a perfectly fine state of possession, and if the medium dares to let go of the control, it can also spark a full fledged possession. In order to facilitate possession, the medium's body and energetic centers can be prepared with herbs and magical powders. And also, Eshu travels well on tobacco smoke and spiritus. When Eshu or Pombagira is taking possession of their horse, they need much tobacco and much liquor to stay in the human vessel. If life force offerings are given, they tend to wash their hands and their faces in the blood, at times eating parts of the internal organs, especially heart and liver. It seems that alcohol, tobacco, and blood fixates their presence. The last form of possession is to have the spirit on your shoulders. This is an interesting form of possession to be under the influence while you are no longer thinking your own thoughts. This is a delicate state and it demands to spirit. to give up your thoughts and feelings and not the body. By doing this, a vinculum of air is formed from the spirit to travel in and influence the medium. In several cases of hauntings and demonic possession throughout all times, it often starts with the victim either feeling something eerie around or starting to have disturbing or depressive thoughts. This would suggest that it is important to recognize the potency in this form of possession. Since this state is delicate, there are two ways of securing a true dialogue. One is to use an oracle, commonly four shells that are used to affirm what is being communicated. The other is to have an assistant that is calling the spirits and thus drives the medium into, at times, amazingly deep trance states bordering or crossing the shamanic. With this, I mean that this state of having Eshu on your shoulders is the premise for some of the most profound possessions possible. Here, possession meets dream, and is why I believe dream work is a very good way of instigating contact with the denizens of hell.
I would say dream work is a good way to work with pretty much any kind of spirit. I mean, at least the ones worked with in Western occultism. I can't speak for Chinese spirits or something, but the ones we work with in the West, dream work is good for pretty much any of them.
I would say that, and I would also say, like, what he's describing as having Eshu on your shoulders or having a spirit on your shoulders is akin to what I talk about when I say, like, in divination, like, you should have a light possession.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Spirits should be informed. Like, I think people don't understand the communication between occultists and spirits a lot of times is not a physically audible or physically visible
Yeah.
communication. It is sometimes it's a nudge. Um, it's a thought that is not organically yours or you wouldn't normally think. And so that people not realizing that actually holds a lot of people back from being more successful with their divination and their spirit contact because they're
That's
thinking too Hollywood.
Yeah. That's why whenever I talk about hearing or seeing, I always do this. I always do hear the spirit or see the spirit. I'm always quoting because I don't actually hear the spirit because they're not here. So they're not present in front of me. They're in the scrying device, or it's not even an evocation. It's a conjuration or something like that. So hearing is more of a psychic, like you said, like a thought that doesn't belong to you, a continuous push in this direction. So
Yeah. Picking back up. Possession is accordingly an altered state of consciousness that varies from dreamlike and airy influences to full body possession. There is one other question that also needs to be addressed in this crossroad of spiritism, spiritualism, umbanda, and possession. All these factions have in common that they claim to work with spirits that they claim to work with spirits that are already to some extent enlightened, assuming that they were once unenlightened. They always have a universally celestial connotation. The departed ones, in the same manner, were called from beyond the celestial veil. This contributes to explain why Umbanda, since the late 50s, and in particular with the impact of Lorenzo Braga on Umbanda, developed hierarchies of angels side by side with the pure hierarchies of Orisha. Eshu, on the other hand, was something set aside. Here were no celestial aromas to be found, just the smell of sulfur and gunpowder. The relocation of this spirit to hell does lead to some serious implications that disjoint Kimbanda from Spiritism and brings it to the realm of the Nigromancer. Okay. Do you want to pick up on Figulus Eshu?
sure.
Okay.
The Figulus Eshu. I was walking at the edge of the trail. Firmly I walked when the train passed by. I heard the anvil and the hammer sounding from hell. The devil himself sent Eshu from hell. And this is from a Panto Cantato. The above Panto Cantado, or the evocative hymn, shows Eshu is the devil's own representative from hell. What the songs attest to is a diabolic imagery that brings together themes ecclesiastical, African, and European. It is an icon very much shaped and molded by the Catholic Church that takes shape. The identification between the devil, or at least his ambassador on earth, and the Orisa Esu has led to countless delirious attempts of explanations. This form of forgetfulness, this form of forgetfulness Brazilian culture underwent was what Bastide referred to as the metamorphosis of memory, where even the oral transmission of sacred lore got subject to reinterpretations caused by dislocation from ancestry, right? And so this is always why I'm saying that like things like oral traditions can't exist on a global scale. It's regional, if not lesser than that, or else it dies out because there's
Mhm.
language barriers, there's cultural barriers. So there can't be oral traditions that exist on a global scale without there being something written in print or recorded on video or audio or something like that. And it seems like Friswold is agreeing here due to the forgotten history of Kimbanda. Um, it is
Well,
a reconstructive memory that entered in particular from the 1900s when the Cardassists were seen as somewhat suspect. Uh, as seen what somewhat suspect were driven to develop Umbanda. Sorry, judicious master, we are not accepting any guests. We are doing a reading at this time. We are not accepting any guests, but thank you for your request. Where did I leave off? When the Cardassists that were seen as somewhat suspect were driven to develop Umbanda. The Kardec Spiritists possessed Christian ideals for morality and purity and a modern theosophical idea of light and its transformation. So they did a sort of alchemical fusion of these two distinct theological practices and brought them together. The caboclos were problematic. Hold on, I gotta bring this over here and then scroll up over here. Was a connection of the ancestry to the ancestry of the land itself. From this
wait.
ambiguity, the Umbadistas of the lower social strata somehow accepted the Manichaean dualism of spiritists that morphed everything indigenous, African, and diabolic into a misrepresentation of the Orisa Esu. And the Manichaeans, that's a Christian terminology for the nature of Christ, whether he is fully human, fully God, or man, God, separate, joined in one body, all that, right? The filioque, all that good stuff. That's the Manichaean stuff. The Umbadistas adopted the same segmentation, and thus the term Kimbanda was used in reference to all things dark, evil, void of light, and African. Well, as always. No wonder that there were several terreiros or temples that cultivated a strong Afrocentrism and barred Caucasians to participate. After all, the distinction was partly caused by the white man's arrogance and racism. The Yoruba Orisa Esu had nothing to do with Makumba prior to the formative years of Umbanda. The diabolic imagery was there as was the reference to the crossroad deities. The root of syncretism is difficult to ascertain due to the lack of documentation prior to 1910. And see, this is why history is so important, right? We're seeing it right now. We don't know the exact lines of transmission when it comes to the syncretic nature of Akimbanda, with the exception of course, we know that it's a mixture of African, European, and Catholic frameworks. But outside of that,
Mhm.
right, prior to 1910, I mean, there's some stuff about Umbanda, but Kimbanda specifically, it doesn't seem that there's much for us to be able to draw from. And this is why oral traditions, they're like, you need to write these things down, or else we
And
can't understand.
it wasn't even allowed to be a separate practice from Umbanda until I think somewhere between the 50s and 70s.
Yeah. uh, we need the history, guys. Prior to 1910. So, in extension of the theory of metamorphosis, we might assume that it was the shared similarities that led to the fusion. The Orisa Esu is the spirit that brings our prayers to Oludumare, God. It is the cosmic linguist and the power of transformation. So the Orisa Esu, at least in the Yoruba line of thinking, is the intermediary, right? Sort of like the saints for a Christian, Catholicism and Orthodoxy, sort of like the saints, or in our case of occultists, pretty much any spirit. Although you might not have a theology where there's a overall deity that spirit takes the prayer to, you should be able to understand the allusion or the connection there. It is the cosmic linguist and the power of transformation. He is associated with the lava at the center of the earth and reputed to cause confusion when people resist change or fail to embrace destiny. The first Yoruba dictionary, brought together by the Yoruba Christian convert and Anglican minister Samuel L. Jackson, no, I'm kidding, Samuel Johnson, who died in 1901, does place in the entry devil the name Esu. Interesting, that's interesting, which has become a common standard. A curious incident, as Yoruba faith does not endorse the existence of the devil as such, the association between Esu and the devil is motivated by Johnson's desire to present the pagan Yoruba faith as a Christian theology. Interesting. Why do people always want to do that? Always want to rewrite things through a Christian lens. It's
Yeah, I have no idea.
it's a weird thing, but whatever. The consequence is that Yoruba monist faith turns into a Manichaean religion, little different in theology from Christianity, while the metaphysics perhaps remain quite eloquent. We should at this point mention that, and then hold on, I gotta scroll down here and then move this over here. All right, the Yoruba and the Bantu, there we go. The Yoruba and the Bantu did not blend in very well. The Yoruba, with their sophisticated and elaborated theology, tended to find the Bantu worldview to be base and crude, and obsessed with fire and death. So there is reason to find the origin of the iconic form of Eshu as conglomerate of Bantu perspectives on death, fire spirits, and the departed masters that retained their influence upon earth from beyond the grave. And but they do this via various pacts and deals that they make with spirits who can help them anchor themselves to remain here to help the next generation, so on and so forth. Similar thoughts are found in Cantimbo as well, which affirms historical records from the beginning of slavery, that the native people and Africans shared a mutual sympathy for each other. We shall not go too deep into the nature of Cantimbo, just remark on the similarities between the use of tobacco, alcohol, possession, and the focus on departed masters. In Cantimbo, this is similar and in some instances fused with the cult of Jurema, who sees their masters as both departed masters and priests that continue to influence their cult, but also as encantados. The latter is a spiritual category consisting of people who we would say were fairy taken, simply vanishing in nature, right? So the missing 411 people, right? they were taken by although some people do say that they were taken by fairies or whatever. At times, this is also used in Kimbanda, then under the name of Caticio. I think that's how you say the C in Portuguese with that accent under it. The idea.
It's soft.
I'm sorry?
The C with the accent under it is soft.
Yeah.
So.
The idea of a spiritual master upon death retaining influence in this cult seems to be identical to what we find in Kimbanda and also in Pelo. As such, the figure of Eshu itself is a composite of native and African spirits, of fire and earth, conjoined with departed masters that in life were dedicated to the cultivation of land, fire, and night, which would explain why this same author's other book on Kimbanda is called Eshu and the Kimbanda of Night and Fire. This book here.
Mm-hmm.
That would
It was a
explain
great
why
book.
that text has that title. Let me see where. Okay, I'll read to the Art of Communion, and then if you want to pick back up.
Okay.
Um, okay. The figura pombagira. The people of hell is those that will take away what is not good to beyond the oceans. Eshu, king of the lyre, is Lucifer. Maria Padilla, Queen Eshu woman. Panto cantado. Astaroth is the plural form of Astareth. Yep,
Yeah.
Astareth. So already here, this Canaanite goddess of fertility, consort of Baal, is in the European grimoire tradition that seeped into the hierarchies of Kimbanda as legion. Well, uh, well, we don't have to get into all that. There's some contention here. Astareth would usually denote multiple deities, not just any particular deity. It was a pejorative for like if you were Christian or a Jew back in the biblical times, which is where this would have been used, um, and you wanted to like say like a bad thing about those groups of pagans over there with all their gods. And if it was a group of goddesses, you would just say Astoreth, um, and blanket them all with that. It didn't denote any particular deity. But anyway, that's not important. Um, in the Solomonic tradition, this deity of lust and ecstasy turned into a male, youthful demon riding a dragon. Well, we already know how I feel about that. Actually, the whole imagery is quite striking in comparison to the courtesan riding the seven-headed dragon in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelations. Exodus 32 speaks of the manufacturing of the golden calf and comments that they indulge in revelry. Yeah, they partied hard under that
Hmm.
yellow calf before Moses went up and was like, y'all wildin'. In the book of Judges and the books of Samuel, this pagan worship, the Israelites apparently had an affinity towards, was directed towards Astoreths. Okay, so then maybe he doesn't know that that was used as a blanket and not just one particular deity. Um, okay, as in the grimoires, Astaroth is male and identified as a force similar to Eshure das Siete Encrucijildas, or King of the Seven Crossroads. What is interesting with this Eshu king is that several Kimbanderos comment on the people who practice Kimbanda comment on the fierce initiated priest of his female counterpart, the Pombagira Reina das Siete Encrucijadas, as being more domineering and demanding than Eshu, so the female counterpart versus the male
Yes.
counterpart. Sorry, did you have something to say about that?
I would say that that's very accurate. uh,
Awesome.
the seven crossroads are pretty demanding, but the she is known to be very loud. Um, very demanding, very loud. So,
Reflects nature.
mhm.
We see that in nature among animals, right? The females are usually the ones with the brighter colors and coats and the bigger whatevers, especially with like insects and things like that.
Yeah, a lot
So
of times when people have Hanya de Setion Cruciatus as their Pombagira, their SU tends to be a quieter SU. Sometimes even SUs that don't speak at all. So like an
interesting.
SU to Delodo or a Tata Cavera. So because she is loud, she takes over. So they let her do the speaking, they do the acting.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. No, Jungle Juice, you did not miss anything. We're only a half hour in. We still got an hour left. So no, you did not miss anything. Astareth is originally a female Ishtar. No, I do not agree with that. I agree with the scholarship of Jake Stratton Kent. I would urge you to check out his book. Um, uh, uh, damn it, the second book in the Encyclopedia Goetica,
Is it the
the Testament of
Geosophia
Cyprian the
or
Mage. The
oh,
Testament of Cyprian the Mage. I would take a look at that. The history of Astaroth as a demon does not come from a deity. It comes from another demon, Onoskelis, from the Temple of Solomon. Excuse me, the Testament of Solomon. Excuse me. So I would take a look at that. And we are reading Conjure Codex Volume 1, Young Matto. We're reading the PDF of this. So this is the physical version. We're reading the PDF of this. This is what we're reading. Conjure Codex, a compendium of invocation, evocation, and conjuration. This is what we're reading. All right. Where did I leave off? Something around here somewhere. Okay, yes. This might indicate that in Pombagira, a specific theme is presented that connects her both to revelry, prophecy, and necromancy. I am here having in mind how Hecate, over time, saw a metamorphosis from the domains of fertility to be a mistress of ghosts holding the key and torch to the crossroads. Well, she goes back even before that. She used to be a minor thing, almost like an angel, before she became a deity. She used to be way different, but that was a much more ancient Hecate than the modern one that we deal with. Hecate, where did I leave Hecate? Where is she? Oh, right there. Okay. I want to underscore that we are here dealing with a theme and not senseless syncretism. But it is interesting that in domestic shrine she was placed at the front door of the house, revealing the same perception about the crossroads and the door being both gateways. If we add a torch to this image, we are luring the spirits of winter and cold to find the flame and warmth. Pombagira also ventured into candomblé, which is the Brazilian form for Orisa veneration. And in particular, the candomblé directing themselves towards Angola as their root. It is from Angola many Bantus came to Brazil and brought their spirits under the names Mpungos and Inquisis. This heritage is evident in the songs of Candomblé de Angola, where they are not adhering to Orisa per se, but to Bantu spirits. Over time, the format tends to have been in many places subject to heavy Yoruba influence on both theology and format of the cult. Here we find a spirit called Aluvaya. It is a male spirit of fertility and fire that, curiously enough, seems to be linguistically of a Tupi origin. Aluvaya possesses several qualities that are either of a Bantu and Congo origin or derivatives of these linguistic roots, such as Mavambo, Marambo, Mavil, Sigatana, and most interesting, Pambunguera, or in its more distorted form, Bongbongira, which most likely led to the popular form of Pombagira. See, this is how you make historical connections. I like that. I like that. That's how you make a that's how you make a case. You don't just say it. You don't just go, "Oh, well, this is connected because that's not." You give the historical connections there. I like that. This is interesting, as from the perspective of traditional metaphysics, the Trinity composed of Eshu Lucifer, Eshu Mor, or Eshu Beelzebub, and Astaroth will then reveal the traditional three colors that often indicate the presence of traditional doctrine to be informing the cult somehow. We will then find that Pombagira represents the red mysteries, while Eshu Mor properly syncretizes with Astaroth's spouse, Beelzebub. Eshu Mor chose to adopt the image of the goat, Black Lord of Fertility. This leaves the white mysteries to Eshu Lucifer, in accordance with the hierarchy. Light flashes through the nights and invigorates the masculine principle that then seeks to join and impregnate the red mysteries held by the queen Eshu woman. The qualities known as Mavambo is so pertinent for the function, Eshu and Pombagira has assumed that this term at times is based or used to refer to the quality of the spirits of Kimbanda in general. Mavambo is the form of Aluvaya that lives at the gates and in the roads, while the other qualities mentioned do carry deep resonances not only to fire, but of blood in various forms. And if you would like to pick up the art of communion.
Yes. The art of communion. What emerges from a critical deduction of possibilities is how Kimbanda has gone through a tremendous synthesis with land and great variety of cultures, and a great variety of cultures. It is like Eshu and Pombagira have been molded by the fires of oppression and the ashes of every imprint made by exiled criminals, or generic, those condemned for any form of malefica, from Southern Europe, Africans, natives, and by immigration in general. The triad, presided over by a unifying principle, the mayoral, whispers to us that they serve a particular function in the world and appease a particular spiritual need and inclination. Seeing how these spirits' qualities have taken shape, the cult is truly Brazilian. But at the same time, it also speaks of how transition of cults, culture, and beliefs can be subject to metamorphosis in other parts of the world, especially those where Catholic faith has informed the social constructs.
Yep.
Going back to everything being Christianized all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Kimbanda rises as a composite of arcane principles that oversees the interaction between humans and departed ones, or the revenants, a term used by Ishtar and Ereshkigal in the Epic of Gilgamesh when they speak of the returning of the dead from the underworld. Accepting this term that, strictly speaking, was used in reference to vengeful departed ones and also informed vampire legends, the dangerous reputation is made more understandable.
Krista, thank you for the roses and thank you for the heart. I appreciate that. And tap that screen, guys. Let's get these likes going. Let's get some more people in here. We're double digits. Let's keep it in the double digits.
When we enter in communion with these spirits, we find that many of them have stories to tell of how their vibrant spirit lingered in terrestrial proximity and was adopted into the fold Kimbanda. Here we find people from different social layers that they are melandros, wise guys and trickster types, doctors or clerics. These stories at times read as hagiographies speaking of the human struggle that does not lead to divine salvation, but a fiery enlightenment of the human condition. It seems plausible to suggest that when the Roman Catholic Church introduced the idea of purgatorium around 1160, that the spirits of Kimbanda as well as the saints find their place here. Purgatory itself was a Catholic response to the pagan practice of caring for the dead, and herein meets the cult of saints and the nigromantic arts. Okay. The prayer for the dead was a complicated affair for the church since its early and formative years. How serious the church took the affairs of the dead is testified by the exhumation of Pope Formosus' corpse in 897, its trivial conviction and consequent burning. Theologians constantly observed care with the dead, and in particular crossroads. The 5th century clerics Cesar Darles, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Darles, and Martin de Braga stated in their sermons that no oaths should be taken and no torches lit in crossroads in order not to call attention from the dead ones. The connection between the dead and the crossroads is testified, for instance, in the Lauralia, the Feast of Crossroads, dedicated to Hecate, and the Lares of the Crossroads, or layers of the crossroads. The patriarch of the family would then hang masks and wooden dolls representing living family members in the trees, asking the spirits of night and death to take these substitutes. This suggests a similar theme resurging with Pombagira, Queen of the Seven Crossroads. Not sure about that, but okay. Necromancy was a form of divination that invited a particular danger for the neophyte and unprepared, to be subject to larvitis. This meant possession by a larvae, a malevolent dead person, the astral husk, if you will. This would lead to states that today are considered as demonic possession, but in reality, this was commonly possessions caused by restless dead and not malefic spirits. Actually, I say most possessions have probably been because of that and not demons, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
in Kimbanda, these spirits were often known as Kiombas, This word is used as a definition that covers both the Roman idea of larvae, as scrolling up, well as nocturnal elemental spirits that are drawn towards passions of any form, hence their reputation of inducing obsession in people. It is in this context of the larvae that we are interested, as here we find a meeting ground between Kimbanda spirit work and spiritism in essence, but not in explanation and perception, even though we are most likely speaking to the same spiritual substance. All right. Saved, saved Kabbalists like Isaac Luria believe that wise men of good character, great Kabbalists, would operate under the influence of Magites, which are angelic teacher guardians of one's consciousness. But in the process of Gilgal, or the soul's metempsychosis, it could happen that a soul in the process of migration besieged a vacant husk and through the station was able to return and influence people. Oh, okay. For instance, the possession of King Saul in the first book of Samuel is the description of a man obsessed, bitter, and enraged. It is Mars afflicted. Luria also comments that this soul impregnation is possible due to many souls sharing a common root. This root is based on the spiritual limbs of Adam Kadmon, 613 in all, 613 in all, which means that this is the number of possible souls ghosts that can attend to partake in one given impregnation. Maybe this explains the metaphysical dimensions of angelic hierarchies as well as the legions of Kimbanda. In later years, this phenomenon has been given the name of Dybbuk. I think this is similar to what I was talking about on, or kind of what I was trying to get to about when we were talking about past lives.
Okay. All right.
It does kind of tie into what I was saying about how, like, it's hard to have a unique singular past life because of this kind of idea. But it also kind of, I thought at the beginning of it, the reason I paused is it reminded me of a legend of voodoo priest taking a recently deceased body and impregnating it with the soul of a dead person, essentially leading to like the rumors of zombies.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a myth that's gone around for a long time. I don't know if it's an actual practice. I don't know anything about voodoo.
Yeah.
But okay, well, I was right here. The besiegement of vacant husks, what the dead leaves behind, was a hot topic in early Spiritism. The turning tables and Ouija boards developed could at times be controlled by malefic spirits or larvae, ghostly pretenders. Several cases of haunting followed experimentation with making spirit contact by clueless people are often caused by these zombie husks. As the Roman proverb says, a fool embraces another fool, and this we can apply to the visible and invisible world. In Kimbanda, the techniques for dealing with these spirits are quite simple, and in fact, in most cases, the Eshu himself takes care of these matters. A whole line of Eshus with the epitaph Das Almas, of the souls, are the take masters of metempsychosis and Kimbanda. Here at the necromantic nerve, we find a way of spirit congress that is highly efficient and actually equally dangerous. I believe there is a reason to trace this form of activity to the Orphic traditions surrounding Apollo and the role of Pythia, the priestess at Apollo's temple in Delphi. There is no reason to go deeply into this myth, only to point out some factors that may give a slightly different perspective on the necromantic arts. Apollo was in charge of the temple activity for 9 months. During these months, the virgin prophetesses were entering oracular states of possession where prophecies were given. The name Pythia would suggest that the oracle was stimulated by serpentine powers, perhaps similar to the red serpent energy of wild territories. However, during the 3 months of winter, the temple was not in function, as this was the time given to Apollo's brother Dionysus, a deity slain and resurrected, which would exemplify the necromantic dynamic. The Lauralia was also a feast executed during the winter, and as such, the winter solstice emerged as a period of time where the dead were more restless than usual. The winter is also the time of year when nights are longer, and the solstice is marked by the longest night upon earth. Throughout time, it was not uncommon to spend the night at the grave with the departed, to eat, drink, and enjoy gambling, a custom the church abolished successively between the 4th and 7th century. Here we find a remnant of what in Kimbanda is at times referred to as a banquet for the dead or the communion. Now, it must be remarked that I have only come across a small handful of practitioners that knew about this format of spirit congress,
Hmm.
while many others claim this is a practice pertaining to Katimbo. In any case, it is a powerful tool akin to working with infernal spirits from the Solomonic tradition by discarding protecting circles and seals. Here states of frenzy, inspiration, and prophecy can take place in a macabre delight that hives the practitioner into not only an altered state of consciousness, but into the other world. Some people refer to this as going to the kingdom. In many ways, it resembles the idea of Igbodu in Ifa, the traditional faith of the Yoruba people, and the essence behind the secrets of the Guevo in, or pretty sure that's not how that's pronounced, in Haitian Vodou. Also, kind of gives me the impression of like going to the world tree in Tradcraft, or ascending or descending the world tree,
Mm-hmm.
or spirit flight, or you use another term for it. I've heard you, or there's a term I've heard you use for it. I can't remember what it is.
Shamanic journey.
Yeah, shamanic journey. That's kind of the impression I got from that. Uh, the communion is very similar to what happened in the prayers of the dead in antiquity, as well as all over Europe at the same time. Remnants of this practice are found in the obligatory feeding of the guests of the departed at burials, but not much is being done for the departed itself. Our ancestors interacted with the kingdom of death in much more direct and involved ways. Greek and Roman funerary rites attest to the use of herbs to ward off scavengers and also to assure the peaceful transition to the afterlife. The songs of lament would both praise and aid the soul in its transition, and offering would be placed at the grave. These were libations of honey, milk, and wine, but also fruits and foods left together with gifts of any form. During the Middle Ages, in Franco Germanic lands, the festivities at the graveyards in honor of the dead were considered sacrilegious. St. Ambrose, already in the 4th century, spoke of the pagans who went to the graves of martyrs with their ale horns after dark to commune with the dead. The ecclesiastical prohibitions from the 4th and to the 8th century testify to a constant struggle with these pagan banquets in honor of the dead. The ecclesiastical concerns with festivities for the dead is rooted in the church father Tertullian's text on the soul, made available around 210, where he reasons that the return of the dead equals the appearance of evil demons from hell. Le coutu? That seems French, but I don't know how to pronounce it.
Mm-hmm. Le couteau.
Yeah, that sounds better than what I said. Refers to a sermon from around 737, where it is explicitly stated that sacrifices are prohibited in the presence of corpses and upon tombs. He further suggests that the idea of return inherited in the funeral banquets was renewed every year. In Germanic countries, this took place at the winter solstice, the Yule, which was substituted with the Dionysian mystery of the birth of Jesus Christ. I don't know if you want to read the last few paragraphs to close this. one out?
Yeah, sure. So the communion with the retinue of Kimbanda should be done with songs, prayers, fires, drinks, and tobacco. Their temple is the crossroad and gate to their kingdom. They are called to partake of a banquet together with the living, but this banquet is the banquet of the tavern. It is the ale horn that is raised, and not so much the crystal glass of noble wine. In these occasions, spirits are invited to influence and possess, to literally turn the mundane temple into the kingdom, something other. In these instances, the Tata presiding takes on a controlling role where the spirits are kept in line, not by treats of fire and brimstone, but by mutual respect. I believe the forms of possession taking place at these nocturnal communions reflect what could have taken place at the banquets for the dead in the past. Oracles would be uttered, earthly delights would once again be consumed, and most importantly, the dynamic link between the living and the dead would be excised. The ongoing multiple synthesis and metamorphosis is revealed in the preceding Ponto that suggests that the mayoral, or chief of Kimbanda, is not under the control of a satanic principle, but rather Saint Michael the Archangel. The idea found in Kimbanda of spirits going through an elevation from being pagan to being baptized and then being given a crown is simply only a reference to the consequences of praying over the dead as typified in the nature of purgatory. The purging process is one of the elevating consciousness and becoming stable and positive spiritual influences. In this process, the shared consciousness between man and spirit, or possession, is an integral and important part. Through this act, ancestral memory runs forth and releases potential in blood and soul amongst the living. Still, they retain a particular function in showing you truth by what is not. As such, they challenge your weaknesses and they tempt your obsessive and possessive sides in order to temper and tame them so you like them can master or can be master of your own life in this human journey. And I guess the Ponto is Suma. Eshu was baptized and received his cross in the phalanx of Don Miguel. Ponto Cantado.
Very
And
cool.
that was Nicolaj de Matos Friswold's chapter in Conjure Codex
Conjure
Volume
Codex.
1. Welcome back, Jungle.
That that was pretty cool. So I like that he touched on a lot of the ideas of like historical context or connections that he made in there, even though some of them I've never either heard before or wasn't really sure of. Um, I do like having that further context.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Um, the last part that we read there, or at least the part that you were reading about the spirit retinue banquet, that reminded me of the dumb supper, which is done in like modern witchcraft circles when
Mhm.
necromancy is being practiced. So I was surprised when he said that he hasn't met many practitioners that are aware of this type of thing. Because I was like, that really sounds like a dumb supper to me. Obviously, way more involved, way more party like. A dumb supper is more reverent, more. It's more that noble glass of wine than the revelry of a tavern. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I was surprised to have read that.
Well, also, I mean, I kind of was surprised when I read that part too because I know that that stuff happens in tradcraft, and I know that Nikolaj is very familiar with tradcraft.
Yeah.
Um, but I think maybe he was just alluding to practitioners of Kimbanda or of
Okay.
the your Reuben.
That's
Uh,
you're probably right. He wasn't probably talking about the totality of occultism.
um, because but there was a lot he went over in that last little thing that I read about. He kind of touched on the colder seasons being having longer nights, which is the reason that they are tied to necromancy a lot of times, or spirit communion happens during those times of year. The Feast of Hecate happens that time of year. But he did have a short section to get a lot of stuff in. So
Sure. And that's a thing. If you guys are interested in more about Kimbanda, Nicolaj de Matos Friswold has two other books. I showed the one earlier. Well, he has these two, which go much deeper into Kimbanda. He's got the Seven Crossroads of Night, this one here, from
Mhm.
Hadean Press, the Seven Crossroads of Night. And then he's got Eshu and the Kimbanda of Night and Fire from Scarlet Imprint.
and then
So seek these out if you have a legitimate interest in Kimbanda. And then if you want to go further, I would seek out a temple or something along those lines in your area or nearby that can guide you.
yeah, I also that he has the Pomajiro book as well.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Thank you. Which I have a PDF. I don't have a physical copy, but I've not gotten to read that one.
yeah,
I need to give that one a try.
but honestly, I mean, he's spoken on a lot of podcasts and stuff as well. So
Hmm.
he gives a lot of this information out pretty often.
All right. Shall we continue on?
Sure.
All right. So now, guys, we're going to move into the next chapter. As I was saying, the one of the beautiful, at least for me, one of the beautiful things about Conjure Codex is every chapter is by a different author and on a different subject, but within the same theme. So it's still about working with spirits and spirit work and all that, but it's not going to be about Kimbanda. Now we're going to move into the grimoires. This is the tree of the grimoires. We're going to sort of do what David Rankine did in his grimoire encyclopedia, and we're going to go through some of the intricacies of the connections of the grimoires, right? How they, how those, what were the roots, and how it blossomed into a tree with the branches of all the various, not all, but a good chunk of the various grimoires that are out there. Um, so that's what this chapter is. It's by Humberto Maggi. I'm a fan of this author. There was a really popular translation of the Cyprian text that he was supposed to have put out, but the specific version I think got shelved, and he did a different version. Um, but yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have to zoom out.
Coincidentally, he has also written on Kimbanda. Um,
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
yeah, I'll have to find the book, but it
I
may
hope you
be a
guys can
book
see that.
on.
I think I'm gonna have to zoom out. Yeah, I can't fit all the words. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to zoom out a bit for this one, but I hope you can still read it. I'm gonna have to go out that far. Um, do you
Queen
want me
of
to
the Seven
continue
Crossroads.
since I only read a couple of paragraphs, or do you want to pick up?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, let me see how far this is. Okay. All right. I guess I'll read to, I guess, this page, and then we'll see. Okay. All right, so the Tree of the Grimoires. It was the year 2008. During my research for the never-ending project on the life and works of Aleister Crowley, a history of the ideas behind his philosophy, poetry, and magic, that I came to the seminal paper published by Aaron Leach in the Hermetic Virtues e-magazine named Grimoire Shamanism, which I actually have a copy of that. Um, from that particular magazine, not any modern reprints. Aaron's exposition was thrilling, as it agreed with some conclusions I'd come to years before when reading Mircea Eliade's book on shamanism. She's the original OG when it comes to shamanism. So, um, Eliade's book is an amazing demonstration of scholarship and research, quoting from hundreds of ethnographic sources to establish what he believed to be the essential features of shamanism. What became very evident for me then, going through all the information selected and thematically distributed in the book, was that almost every, if not all, magical phenomenon described in Western tradition testimonies never deviated from the experiences reported by primitive shamans. Yes, we all are aware the history, the origin of the vast majority of, of magic, of occultism, lies in shamanism. Um, of course, from the testimonies of the Theurgists and the Neoplatonic mystics in late antiquity, through the medieval and Renaissance magi up to the Golden Dawn adepts, the symbolism of the narratives varied considerably, but beneath the changing surface of different cultural moods, there are always found the same processes, which I do agree with. I say all the time, I'm not a perennialist, but I do understand and I do recognize the perennial connections of at least the occult, and most systems. Not all, but most. Um, Meditative practices were not part of the magical training for Western magicians until pioneers like Alan Bennett and Aleister Crowley, I don't know if I would call them pioneers, but anyway, opened the tradition to the Eastern wisdoms. And I would even say probably Blavatsky would have done that with her theosophy and all that. The centuries-long prohibition against the magicians under Greco-Roman legislation and the persecution promoted by Judeo-Christian faiths succeeded in large part in preventing magical lineages from developing. Thus, we ended up with a core of magical practices founded upon spirits and books. You inspired me for 2 years now. Oh, well, thank you very much, Jungle. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support. Even when transcendence was the aim sought, Western magicians called upon the help and interventions of angels and gods to bring about the desired epiphany. The contact with these angelic or divine beings brought not only enlightenment, but was usually accompanied by the transmission of knowledge. The books of magic found themselves then at both extremes of the revelation process, being the providers of a method and also the fruit of revealed knowledge. So essentially, you get the information from the spirits, right? The spirit gives you the information, you write that information down. So it's sort of like a spiritual circle, if you will.
This is the actual revelation.
Right, yes. Um, where did I leave off? I hate these big paragraphs. Oh, right there. The perfect example and one of the oldest of the known grimoires, the Sworn Book of Honorius, demonstrates this point exactly, witnessing it to be written with the help of the angel Hokroel and containing detailed information for both the establishment of spiritual communications and for attaining the beatific vision. Um, which is supposed to be what Jesus gives you for viewing heaven and all that. Such as what he did for the people in the Old Testament who didn't have Christ. You know, he retroactively went back, gave them the beatific vision, they saw heaven, and now they're saved. A conversation with spirits and celestial visions were two of the fundamental features of primitive shamanism, and not only the aims but also the methods and results used by primitive shamans are repeated with astonishing similarity in the grimoire tradition. And that's why, or that's one of the reasons why I'm always going on about repeatability, which is why I don't agree with pretty much 99% of what the New Age talks about when it comes to methodology, because it's not repeatable. We just have to trust that the person on screen knows what they're talking about and that they're actually channeling these beings. And they're not, because it's not repeatable, and we know that because they, number one, they don't share their methods, and number two, when you find out what their methods are, it's just close your eyes and hope and wish. Who is the author of this book? So this is an anthology, so it's not one author. It is edited by Jake Stratton Kent, but the author of this particular chapter is Humberto Maggi. But it's an anthology book, so every chapter is written by a different author. It's not one author wrote the whole book, or two authors or whatever. Each chapter is by a different author. Looking to some examples, we can check for a start at the coinciding descriptions provided by ethnographic testimonies and the grimoire literature about the apparition of the spirits. The ethnographic data to follow comes from the Aborigines tradition studied by A.P. Elkin in his Aboriginal Men of High Degree, and is quoted in Chapter 3 of Eliad's work. The grimoire information comes from the Heptameron and Cellini's memories, most famous invocation at the Colosseum. And if you guys remember, Cellini is who? Benvenuto Cellini, who, that's where we get the word Gambulin, for those who remember. We read his account He has that chapter in his autobiography where he talks about wanting to summon a spirit, and he meets a necromancer, and they take him out to the Colosseum with this young boy to be the scryer, and they summon spirits and all this other stuff. So that's what that is. All right, and so now we're going to get a little bit of it right here. I'll read this, and then you can pick up with the next page.
Okay.
So Elkin, we'll read Elkin first, then Heptameron, then Selene. So Elkin, his states, however, some of them are evil spirits. Some are like horses with men's heads, and some are spirits of evil men, which resemble burning fires. You see your camp burning and the blood waters rising, and thunder, lightning, and rain, the earth rocking, the hills moving, the waters whirling, and the trees which do stand still swaying about. So this is, they're describing what happens during a physical evocation. Where I leave off. Do not be frightened. If you do, you will break the web or the thread on which the scenes are hung. You may see dead persons walking towards you, and you will hear their bones rattle. If you hear and see these things without fear, you will never be frightened of anything. These dead people will not show themselves to you again because your miwi is now, I don't know what that is now strong. You are now powerful because you have seen these dead people. Note, I don't do physical evocation. I believe it is extremely, extremely difficult, borderline impossible, so I've never had such experience. The Heptameron states, these things being duly performed, meaning the ritual aspect of the evocation, there will appear infinite visions, apparitions, phantasms, and etc. Beating of drums and the sounds of all kinds of musical instruments, which is done by the spirits, that with the terror they might force some of the companions out of the circle, because they can effect nothing against the exorcist himself. After this you shall see an infinite company of archers, with a great multitude of horrible beasts, which will arrange themselves as if they would devour the companions. Nevertheless, fear nothing. And then finally, my guy Bienvenuto Cellini, he says, now the necromancer began to utter those awful invocations, calling by name on multitudes of demons, who are captains of their legions. And these he summoned by the virtue and potency of God. So here we see, we know for a fact Bienvenuto was not a magician. His autobiography has nothing to do with magic whatsoever, with the exception of this one chapter where it's an experience he had on behalf of someone else. So he did not perform magic, it was someone else. And yet, Bienvenuto knew the process of grimoire magic, right? He knew that the spirits listed in say the Goetia, as an example, rule over legions. They are captains. Of course, they use different, dukes, kings, marquises, whatever, but they are captains of their legions. And then he summoned them, not Bienvenuto, the necromancer, through the virtue and the potency of God, which is exactly what the grimoires do, right? So for someone to not be familiar with the grimoires in a practical sense, but be aware of them, be aware of their existence, what they talk about, what they say, speaks to the veracity of the grimoires themselves. The potency of God, the uncreated, living, and eternal, in phrases of the Hebrew and also of the Greek and Latin tongues, insomuch that in a short space of time, the whole Colosseum was full of 100-fold as many as had appeared upon the first occasion. Vincenzio Romoli, together with Anglonino, attended the fire and heaped on quantities of precious perfumes. Again, another callback to the grimoires, right? Placing incense on top of the brazier for it to continue to burn and offer sweet scents and all this other stuff, as to offer the spirit and also to appease God. Excuse me. At the advice of the necromancer, I again demanded to be reunited with Angelica. We know that that was the purpose of why Bienvenuto Cellini wanted to do the ritual. He lost his love. He wanted to see his love. The source returned to me and said, hear you what they have replied, that in the space of 1 month you will be where she is. Then once more he prayed me to stand firm by him, because the legions were 1,000-fold more than he had summoned, and were the most dangerous of all the denizens of hell. And now that they had settled what I asked, it behooved us to be civil to them and dismiss them. On the other side, the boy who was beneath the pinnacle shrieked out in terror that 1,000,000 of the fire-cast men were swarming around and threatened us. He said, moreover, that 4 huge giants had appeared who were striving to force their way inside the circle. And then we know after that somebody farted, and the spirits got upset because someone farted and started to leave. And then they all followed the spirits, and then that's where we get the Gambulin, because that's what he said they were doing. So, a very interesting text.
Gambulin. Okay.
And if you want to go ahead and pick up.
I haven't read that, but that's funny.
Closer us out for the night.
Sure. First, noting that this is far from being the only kind of result described in the grimoires, as in the ethnographic data, we see that the 3 descriptions coincide in that the spirits attend the ceremony in large numbers, with overwhelming manifestations and extremely aggressive behavior towards the magician and his assistants. We cannot prove whether the grimoire descriptions came from an ancient tradition with shamanic roots, or if we are facing an archetypal experience. The point I want to emphasize is that either way, the Aboriginal shamans had been experimenting with the phenomenon for long ages before the grimoire writer and Cellini set their descriptions down. Nevertheless, more than the difference in time, the geographical distance between Australia and Europe, in this case, argues for the emergence of archetypal experiences. Even if the writer of the Heptameron and the priest who conducted the ceremony at the Colosseum were heirs to a tradition much older than the presence of Christianity in Europe, this original tradition would be exempt from being influenced by the Australian one.
Although I don't agree. Cellini was 14th, 15th century. Christianity was in full swing by that time. This is he wasn't ancient. He was medieval, or well, slightly after medieval.
Also, there was something that triggered a footnote for me, and I'm trying to remember what it was. The idea of spirits coming in legions and large numbers. That's also something not talked about enough, especially with necromancy. But because people don't go back and read grimoires, but that's a common thing. The Aborigines' testimony also points to another important implication. It states that the aggressive and overwhelming manifestation of the spirits was a kind of test of courage, which being successfully faced would not happen again. This raises the question of whether or not the Heptameron represents an incomplete system. And if it does, if the system is incomplete because 1, the transmission of the knowledge was imperfect, or 2, the writer on purpose omitted it, or 3, the writer or his source never went beyond the first step of the process.
Huh.
Most likely a combination.
Yep.
So Cellini's description and the Aborigines' account also points to an important feature of the spirit's conjuring, the nature of the visions. It is the priest who hears the answers of the spirits to Cellini's questions and transmits it to him. It is the virgin boy who can see the giants and warns about their attempt to break the circle. In the same fashion, the Aborigine instructs about avoiding fear as it will break the web or thread on which the scene is hung. Both cases indicate that visions cannot be seen by everyone and that they require a determined concentration or state of mind. The Heptameron repeats the injunction to not fear, although without mentioning a specific reason for this. Another striking similarity between the European grimoires and the shamanic traditions refer to the forms of the spirits, who often take the shape of diverse kinds of animals. Eliade?
Mm-hmm. Eliade.
Okay, yeah. Eliade, still in chapter 3, mentions that among the Siberians and the Altaians, they can appear in the form of bears, wolves, stags, hares, all kinds of birds, especially the goose, eagle, owl, crow, etc. It is instructive to compare this with the theriomorphic descriptions of the Lemegeton, which include bears, wolves, hart and goose, crow, raven, dove, and peacock. The list extends to lions, cat, toad, crocodile, horse, leopard, viper, bull, dog, ram, and dromedary. The spirits from the Lemegeton can assume a human form, which is encouraged, and on the reverse, they can transform men into animals, uh, as does Andrelephus, Andrialphus, who can transform a man into ye likeness of a bird. A typical shamanic feature is precisely the same ability to transform oneself into an animal and back.
Mm-hmm.
According to Eliade, still in chapter 3, from the most distant times, almost all animals have been conceived either as psychopomps that accompany the soul into the beyond or as the dead person's new form. The relation of the theriomorphic shapes of the Lemegeton spirits with the souls of the dead points to the probable origin of the grimoire practices in ancient funerary rites, and a matter fully described in Jake Stratton Kent's work Geosophia,
Yes.
which is a great book as well.
Yes. Read all three of the Encyclopedia Goetica books, not just Josephia. They're all great.
Uh, some of the Lemegeton spirits appear riding different kinds of animals, and following Eliade, we note that in a considerable number of myths and legends all over the world, the hero is carried into the beyond by an animal. And it is always an animal that carries the neophyte into the bush, the underworld, on its back, or holds him in its jaws, or swallows him to kill and resuscitate him, and so on. Oh, that's an important.
Yeah, it's an animal. When I go shamanic journeying, if I ever get in trouble, and I need like a quick way out, it's always an animal that like helps me. It's usually a bird, because that's my power animal. My spirit animal is a specific type of bird, and so it's usually a bird that comes to like get me out. But yeah, animals are extremely popular to be used as guides, psychopomps, guardians, whatever, from a shamanic perspective.
Yeah. Um, Keeping in mind the initiatory character of being killed by the spirits in the shamanic traditions throws another light on the description of one of the most feared denizens of the pseudomonarch. I can't get the word out. Pseudomonarchia
Mm-hmm.
demon. Um, Andras is a great marquess and is seen in an angel shape with a head like a black night raven riding upon a black and very strong wolf. Flourishing with a sharp sword in his hands, he can kill the meister, the servant, and all assistants. He is author of discords and ruleth 30 legions. That's a lot of spirits.
Yes, it is.
In the same fashion, Barbatos understandeth the singing of birds, the barking of dogs, the lowering of bullocks, and the voices of all living creatures. And Cain's power too giveth men the understanding of all birds, of the lowering of bullocks, and barking of dogs, and also of the sound of the noise of waters. These are striking as clearly shamanic features, and if we follow the next quote from Iliad, it again establishes a connection with the rites for the dead. All over the world, learning the language of animals, especially of birds, is equivalent to knowing the secrets of nature, and hence to be able to prophecy. Bird language is usually learned by eating snake or some other reputedly magical animal. These animals can reveal the secrets of the future because they are thought to be receptacles for the souls of the dead or epiphanies of the gods. Learning their language, imitating their voice, is equivalent to ability to communicate with the beyond and the heavens. Uh, I don't know how far you want to read, but
Um,
um,
I mean, it's up to you if you want to keep going, or I can read for the last few minutes. It's up to you.
uh, I'll pick up the next paragraph and quote. Yeah, okay. The ability demonstrated by Barbatos to understand different kinds of animal sounds, which is probably mentioned to indicate also his ability to teach it to the magician, is described in a way very similar to what we see in a quote from Castane, made by Eliade concerning the Baksa from the Kyrgyz Tatar people, who bark like a dog, sniff at the audience, lows like an ox, bellows, cries, bleats like a lamb, grunts like a pig, whinnies, coos, imitating with remarkable accuracy the cries of animals, the songs of birds, the sound of their flight, and so on, all of which greatly impress his audience. In its origins, then, Barbatos possibly was a spirit with the power to initiate a man, transforming him into a shaman, and or was himself the spirit of a deceased shaman. Spirits of deceased shamans play a prominent role in shamanic initiations all around the globe. Another shamanic feature attributed to the spirits, which appears to have survived or resurfaced in the Lemegeton, is the differentiation between the familiar and other kinds of spirits.
Thank you.
Allowing, yeah, allowing Eliade once again to introduce us to these categories. This appears even more clearly from the examination of the other categories of spirits that also play a role either in the shaman's initiation or in bringing on his ecstatic experiences. We said above that a relation of familiarity is established between the shaman and his spirits. That was the end of the sentence. And in fact, in ethnological literature, they are known as familiars, helping, assistants, or guardian spirits. But we must distinguish carefully between familiar spirits proper and another and more powerful category of spirits known as tutelary spirits. So, too, a distinction must be made between these last and the divine or semi divine beings whom the shamans summon up during seances. A shaman is a man who has immediate, concrete experiences with gods and spirits. He sees them face to face, he talks with them, prays to them, implores them, but he does not control them. More than a limited number, but he does not control more than a limited number of them. Any god or spirit invoked during a shamanic seance is not, by that fact, one of the shaman's familiars or helpers. The great gods are often invoked. The shaman invokes them, and the gods, demigods, and spirits arrive, just as the Vedic divinities descend and attend the priest when he invokes them during the sacrifice. The shamans also have divinities peculiar to them, unknown to the rest of the people, and to whom they alone offer sacrifices. But all this pantheon is not at the shaman's disposition, as his familiar spirits are, and the divine or the semi-divine beings who help him must not be classed among these familiar or helping or guardian spirits. We must note that the majority of these familiar spirits have animal forms.
Nice.
Okay.
We can stop there.
Okay.
We only got about 4 minutes left. But next week we'll get into this right here about the familiars. What I've always been saying. People always want to get mad at me, but not my fault.
I mean, familiars, I do like, I think it may have been in the quote where they were talking about the difference in familiarity with a spirit versus a spirit familiar. Um, well, no, it was in the paragraph above that. Um, there's a different, or one of them, the difference in familiars and tutelary spirits. So a lot of people conflate those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Tutelary spirits often give you familiars, not are your familiars. Um, and then the section about the spirit taking animal form and eating or killing the magician, the practitioner, shaman. Hecate has a ritual like that, actually, an initiation ritual, um, where her snake eats and then regurgitates the magician as a form of rebirth.
I did not know that.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a good text. I like this. I like this book. Um, and wouldn't mind reading the other four after we're finished with this one. Um, these are really cool, and I really dig the anthology of it, and it keeps it fresh, and it keeps it, from drying out, right? You get a few pages of whatever this subject is, and then if you didn't enjoy that, that's okay. Within a week or two, it'll be a different chapter with a different,
Yeah,
subject. Still on the same theme, but a different subject with a different author. So I really enjoy this anthology stuff.
I do like the Conjure Codex series in particular. I think they're very, very well done.
Hmm.
Um, Serpent Songs is a good anthology from Friswald or Friswald. Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that. I don't have that. I'm gonna have to see if Anna has it.
should because I have it,
Where's
so
Anna?
more than likely that's where I got it.
Oh, from Anna. Okay, then I'm sure
Yeah,
it's
more
there.
than likely. Um, it's a good anthology. It has some good
Yep.
people in it. Uh, Friswald himself, and then Jesse Hathaway Diaz. Um, it's got some good stuff in it. It's on the tradcraft side of things, which is
Sure.
interesting considering some of the contributors. Um, I don't think Jesse really practices tradcraft, but there is a lot of link between tradcraft and Kimbanda. So
Yeah, I'll check this one out, but I don't think I would have any issues, reading this, um, eventually.
oh yeah, I would be down to read all the anthologies that we can find. I like being able to get like bite-sized views from people.
Yes, agreed. I really enjoy it, and am looking forward to our future readings. But yeah, I will definitely take a look at Serpent Songs. Issa says yes, this is awesome. Please read them all. Yeah, oh yes. I know I downloaded. Let me see. I know I downloaded. Let me just download. Okay, so there's Conjure Codex 2 and 3. I just got to get 4 and 5 for the PDF. So we'll definitely read 2. I've got 2 right here and 3 right here, and then 1 we're reading already, right there. But
Mhm.
I need to get 4 and 5 PDF versions. Um, but we'll at least read the first 3, definitely. Um,
If you can find 4 and 5, let me know because I cannot.
I will. I will send them
Um,
to you. Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
because
because
I have physical copies, but I don't
same,
have PDF copies of them.
same. I have physical copies, but not PDF. And we're not. I'm not at the level yet where I've got that nice book reader camera and all that. So
Yeah,
one day, one day.
I don't even use my camera, so
All right. So we have reached the end here. So thank you guys for hanging out with us for the last hour and a half. We will pick this up next week, with our reading here, on page 40. We'll pick up right here. There are 8 Lemageddon spirits who give familiars, and continue our reading of Conjure Codex. Thank you, Venom, for taking time out of your evening to read and elucidate with us. It was a great time as always. Any final words from you, brother?
thanks for having me up, and thanks for the people that hung out and listened and commented. Hope everyone has a great night.
Yes, I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. As always, seek the mysteries. Peace.